The throne room of the Zelthari Empire stretched into impossible heights, its vaulted arches shimmering with bioluminescent veins that pulsed like a living thing. The air hummed with the low-frequency resonance of imperial authority, a sound meant to unsettle visitors before they even laid eyes on the Emperor. Captain Elias Vance, however, was not unsettled. He strode forward, boots clicking against the obsidian floor. His posture relaxed in a way that made the royal guards twitch. They were massive, their chitinous armor glinting under the eerie light, yet their grip on their plasma pikes tightened as he passed. Humans were rare in the inner systems, rarer still in the presence of Zorith the Eternal. Elias was an exception. At the base of the dais, he stopped, tilting his head up to meet the Emperor's gaze. Zorith loomed, his 4 arms draped over the arms of his throne, his elongated face shadowed by the jagged crown fused to his skull. His eyes, black and depthless, studied Elias with cold calculation. "You are the one they call the Ghost of Krellis." The Emperor's voice was a vibration more than sound, the translator implant in Elias's skull, rendering it into something comprehensible. Elias smirked. "Depends on who's asking." A murmur rippled through the court. No one spoke to the Emperor like that. No one lived long enough to try twice. Zorith leaned forward, his crown casting fractured shadows across his face. "You butchered an entire battalion of my elite guard. Alone. They were in my way." Silence. Then laughter. A deep, grating sound that echoed unnaturally in the vast chamber. The Emperor's mandibles twitched in amusement. "A human, a soft skin. And yet you stand where my finest warriors have fallen." His amusement faded as quickly as it came. "Why?" Elias exhaled, his stance shifting just enough to suggest he was weighing his next words. "I don't like being hunted." Another pause. The Emperor's fingers drummed against the throne. Then, with a flick of one wrist, he gestured to the side passage. "Bring them." The doors hissed open. 3 figures emerged, their forms silhouetted against the glow of the corridor beyond. The princesses. Arissa came first, tall, her armored carapace polished to a lethal sheen, her stride that of a warrior who had never known defeat. Her twin sister, Vela, followed, her movements precise, her many eyes scanning the room with detached curiosity. Last was Mira, the youngest, her presence unsettling in its quietness, her mind already brushing against Elias's thoughts before she even reached him. Zorith spread his hands. "These are my heirs. Arissa, Vela, Mira, blood of my blood, the future of the Zelthari Dominion." His gaze locked onto Elias. "And I gift them to you." The throne room erupted, Arissa's claws unsheathed with a hiss. "Father!" Silence. The Emperor's command cracked like a whip. "Our line weakens. Our enemies multiply. We need strength." New strength. His eyes burned into Elias. "You will take them. You will bind yourself to this dynasty. And you will give me warriors worthy of the Zelthari name." Elias didn't react. Not to the outrage of the court. Not to the fury radiating off Arissa. Not even to the way Mira's gaze lingered on him, as if she could peel back his skull and sift through his thoughts. Instead, he smiled. "No." The air turned to ice. Zoritha's voice dropped to a whisper. "You refuse me?" Elias held his gaze. "I don't take prisoners. And I don't take prizes." He glanced at the princesses, his expression unreadable. "But I'll take a deal." Arissa snarled. "You dare bargain with the Emperor?" "I do." Elias's voice was calm. "Because he's not the only one who knows what's coming." For the first time, uncertainty flickered in Zoritha's eyes. Elias stepped closer, his voice dropping so only the Emperor could hear. "Vrox is moving against you, and if you don't act soon, this throne won't be yours to give away." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Then slowly Zorith leaned back. "You presume much, human." Elias shrugged. "I survive more." The Emperor's mandibles twitched. "Very well. A bargain, then. You will take my daughters, not as gifts but as allies. And together you will root out this treachery." His voice darkened. "Fail me, and I will peel the flesh from your bones myself. Elias nodded once. Fair enough. Orissa looked ready to murder him on the spot. Vela watched with cold interest. Mira smiled. And as the court dissolved into chaos, Elias knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning. The moment the throne room doors sealed behind them, Orissa lunged. Her claws flashed toward Elias's throat, only to freeze a hair's breadth from his skin. Not because he blocked her. Not because she hesitated. Because he hadn't moved at all. Predictable, he said, his voice flat. Orissa's carapace flushed crimson with fury. You insulted the Emperor. You insulted us. Elias tilted his head, studying her. If I wanted to insult you, Princess, you'd know. Vela stepped between them, her many eyes narrowing. Enough. Father's orders are clear. We tolerate him. For now. Her voice was cool, logical. But the way her secondary claws flexed betrayed her irritation. Mira, silent until now, drifted closer. Her fingers brushed Elias's temple, then recoiled as if burned. You're shielding your thoughts, she murmured. Why? Because I like my privacy. Elias turned toward the corridor. And because we're being watched. The princesses stilled. He was right. The palace walls were never just walls. The Zelthari Empire thrived on surveillance, on whispers in the dark. Every archway, every corridor hummed with hidden eyes. Orissa bared her teeth. Then speak plainly, human. If Vrox is truly plotting treason, why hasn't father crushed him already? Elias didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into his coat and tossed a small holodisk onto the floor. It flickered to life, projecting a star map and a single, pulsing coordinate. Because Vrox isn't acting alone. The image shifted, revealing a transmission log. A voice, distorted but unmistakably not Zelthari, rasped through the static. Asterisk, the Emperor falls. The human dies. The Dominion is ours. Asterisk. Vela's breath hissed through her vents. Outsiders. Worse, Elias said. Allies. Vrox made a deal with someone beyond the border. Someone who wants the throne and a war. Mira's pupils dilated. You knew this, before you even stepped into the throne room. I had suspicions. Elias deactivated the holodisk. Now I have proof. Orissa's claws retracted with a sharp click. Then we take this to father. Now. No. Elias's voice cut like steel. The moment we do, Vrox will know we're onto him, and he'll accelerate his plans. Vela crossed her arms. So what do you propose? A slow, dangerous smile curled Elias's lips. We play his game, and we cheat. Hashtag the trap. Midnight in the Royal Archives should have been silent. It wasn't. Vela's fingers danced across the data terminals, slicing through encryption layers with surgical precision. Vrox's communications are buried under 7 tiers of imperial firewalls, she muttered. But he's arrogant. He left a backdoor. Orissa paced, her armored feet clicking against the floor. This is a waste of time. We should be hunting him, not digging through files. Elias leaned against a shelf, watching Mira. The youngest princess hadn't spoken in minutes. Her gaze was distant, her mind clearly elsewhere. You're in his head, Elias said quietly. She blinked, refocusing. Not deeply, just echoes. He's afraid. And excited. That's bad, Elias said. Vela suddenly stiffened. Found it. The screen flared to life, displaying a series of encrypted missives. Supply routes, weapons shipments, and assassins, Vela whispered. He's hired the Kethvor. Orissa's blood ran cold. The Kethvor were shadows, ghosts. No one survived their contracts. Elias, however, just nodded. Good. Good? Asterisk, Orissa snarled. It means we're right. He pushed off the shelf. And it means we know where he'll strike next. Hashtag the ambush. The royal gardens were supposed to be a sanctuary. Tonight they were a killing field. Elias had insisted on the bait. Vrox won't risk attacking the Emperor directly yet. But a lone human, wandering where he shouldn't? Too tempting. The princesses had argued. Mira had seen the danger in his plan, the way the threads of fate twisted around him, dark and fraying. But they'd agreed. Now, as Elias strolled through the bioluminescent foliage, he counted the seconds. Asterisk 3, 2, 1. Asterisk. The attack came from above. A Kethvor dropped from the canopy, its bladed limbs aimed for his spine. Elias twisted, letting the strike graze his side. Just enough to draw blood, just enough to sell the illusion. Then the trap sprung. Orisa erupted from the shadows, her claws rending through the assassin's carapace. Vela's drones disabled its tech. Mira pushed, her telepathy lancing into its mind, ripping out everything it knew. And then she screamed. "It's not just Vrox," she gasped. "The outsiders, they're already here." Asterisk asterisk. The gardens exploded in gunfire. Elias yanked Mira behind a pillar as plasma bolts seared the air. "Change of plans," he muttered. "We run." Orisa snarled, but Vela was already dragging her back. "They've compromised the palace defenses. If we stay, we die." Elias glanced at Mira. "Can you hide us?" She nodded, her breath ragged. "For a while, but not forever. Long enough." Elias activated his calm time to call in a favor. As the Kethvor closed in, as the garden burned around them, one truth became undeniable. The game had just begun, and the rules were theirs to break. #### word count 1,980. #### key elements asterisk. Heavy check mark deepen the conspiracy. Vrox's alien allies. Heavy check mark showcased each princess's skills. Orisa's combat, Vela's tech, Mira's telepathy. Heavy check mark raised stakes with the Kethvor ambush. Heavy check mark ended on a cliffhanger. Escape, but greater threat revealed. Next section will unleash the full scale of the betrayal and humanity's counterstrike. Need any adjustments? The safe house stank of ion burns and stale adrenaline. Elias slammed the door shut behind them, his fingers flying over the rusted security panel until the locks hissed into place. The princesses stood frozen in the dim light, Orisa with her claws still dripping Kethvor ichor, Vela's drones whirring in defensive patterns, Mira gripping her temples as if trying to hold her fractured thoughts together. "This is a human den," Orisa spat, her carapace flickering with disgust. "This," Elias corrected, tossing a medkit onto the table, "is the only place in the sector Vrox doesn't control." The walls were lined with outdated star charts and weapons that hadn't been legal in 3 systems. A single flickering holoscreen cast jagged shadows, displaying a live feed of the palace. Smoke curling from the gardens, Imperial guards scrambling in chaos. Vela's secondary eyes narrowed. "You planned for this." "I hoped I wouldn't need to." Elias ripped open his sleeve, exposing the gash from the Kethvor blade. The edges were already necrotic, veins darkening under his skin. "Poison. Clever bastards." Mira was at his side in an instant, her fingers hovering over the wound. "It's eating your nerves. I can slow it." Her voice wavered. "But not stop it." Elias met her gaze. "Buy me time." She hesitated, then pressed her palm to his arm. A psychic hum filled the air as her telepathy wove through his flesh, stitching agony into temporary stillness. Elias didn't flinch. Orisa watched, her mandibles tight. "Why? Why what?" He didn't look up. "Why risk your life for us?" Her claws flexed. "You could have fled. You still can." Elias finally turned, his eyes glinting in the low light. "Because Vrox isn't just after your throne. He's selling your empire to the Drakshi." The name hit like a plasma round. Vela's drones stuttered mid-air. "The Drakshi haven't been seen since the Purge Wars." "Exactly." Elias tapped the holoscreen, pulling up a distorted image, a fleet of jagged ships lurking beyond the fringe. "They've been waiting, and Vrox just handed them the keys." Mira's breath hitched. "He's right. I saw it in the assassin's mind. The Drakshi are already moving." Silence. Then we kill him." Orisa's voice was a blade unsheathed. "Now." Elias shook his head. Vrox is shielded. Palace is locked down. We go in blind, we die. Vela's claws clicked against the table. So we don't go in blind. A pause. We use me. Elias frowned. Explain. Vrox wants the throne. But first, he needs the Emperor's biometrics to override the defense grid. She straightened. He'll take me alive. I'm the only heir with the knowledge to bypass the codes. Orisa snarled. No. It's the only way. Vela's gaze locked onto Elias. But I'll need a distraction. Elias exhaled slowly. Then he reached under the table, pulling out a rusted metal case. The biometric lock recognized his blood, and the lid hissed open, revealing a single, slender device. Orisa recoiled. Is that a fusion charge? Miniaturized. Elias grinned, all teeth. Courtesy of human engineers who really hate the Drakshi. Mira's pupils dilated. You're going to blow up the palace. Just the shield generators. He snapped the case shut. After that, it's on you three. Orisa bared her fangs, but it wasn't a threat this time. It was a promise. Then let's end this. #### the storming. The palace shields died in a burst of white fire. Elias's charge detonated precisely where he'd promised, vaporizing the eastern spire and sending the Drakshi-aligned guards scrambling. Chaos erupted. Perfect cover for Vela to slip into the lower vaults, for Orisa to carve through the panicked ranks, for Mira to weave illusions through the enemy's crumbling minds. Elias fought his way toward the throne room alone. The poison was spreading, his vision blurring at the edges, but he didn't stop, couldn't. The doors loomed ahead, scarred and smoking, and behind them, the muffled sound of a struggle. He kicked them open. The scene froze. Zorith the Eternal knelt, his carapace cracked, one arm severed at the elbow. Above him stood Vrox, his claws dripping Imperial blood, a Drakshi warship hovering on the view screen behind him. And in the corner, Vela, pinned by two Kethvor, her drones shattered at her feet. Vrox turned, his mandibles spreading in a grotesque smile. Ah, the human. Come to witness the dawn of a new... ***. Elias shot him in the throat. The High Chancellor staggered, choking on his own ichor, just long enough for Zorith to surge upward and rip out his spine. Silence. Then the view screen crackled. A Drakshi voice, thick with malice, filled the room. You delay the inevitable. Our fleets are already... ***. Wrong. The screen split, and suddenly it wasn't just the Drakshi. New ships blinked into existence, sleek and deadly, their hulls marked with a sigil the galaxy hadn't seen in decades. The human fleet. Elias smirked, blood trickling from his lips. You forgot one thing. He tapped his temple. I called them. The Drakshi screamed. Then the transmission cut as the first orbital strike hit. Zorith collapsed, his strength spent. Vela wrenched free, rushing to his side. Orisa and Mira burst in moments later, their armor scorched but triumphant. And Elias? He sank against the wall, watching as the sky burned, as the Drakshi fled, as the princesses, his princesses, now, turned to him with something like awe. Mira reached him first. Her fingers brushed his cheek. You're dying. Worth it. His voice was barely a whisper. Orisa snarled, grabbing his arm. No, you don't get to leave now. Vela was already at work, her claws splicing wires, her drones injecting him with something that burned like liquid starlight. Imperial nanites. They'll fight the poison. Elias gasped as the fire spread through his veins. Since when do you care? Orisa's grip tightened. Since you proved humans aren't weak. Zorith groaned, lifting his head. The Drakshi will return. Elias laughed, ragged and raw. Let them. Outside, the first rays of dawn pierced the smoke-streaked sky. The Empire had fallen, and from its ashes, something new would rise.